The early morning light slipped quietly through the threadbare curtains of Ella Prescott's modest apartment in Des Moines, Iowa. The paint on the walls was faded and peeling, the hardwood floors worn smooth by years of footsteps that had carried a heavy burden. The air was still except for the distant hum of traffic and the occasional creak of the aging buildings settling. Ella lay awake, eyes fixed on the cracked ceiling, as she thought back to that day in the summer of 1985. 25 years had passed, but the memory was sharp, raw, and unforgiving. Her son Logan had been 8 years old. That bright-eyed, curious boy with an infectious laugh and a love for the vintage carousel at the state fair. It was supposed to be a day of joy, a tradition they shared, father, mother, and son. But when Logan vanished into the crowd, everything changed. One moment he was posing beside a clown character for a photo. The next, he was gone. Searches ensued, frantic and exhaustive. Flyers plastered around town, private investigators hired, the police chasing leads that all ran cold. Ella's husband, Mark, drifted away in the years that followed, unable to endure the relentless grief. Ella was left alone, the weight of loss pressing on her like a stone. Her world shrank into this small apartment where every shadow seemed to whisper Logan's name. She often found herself staring at the old Polaroid camera she had brought to the fair that day. The camera that captured Logan's smile before the darkness swallowed him. As the years stretched on, Ella learned to live with the ache, to carry hope and despair side by side. But her heart never stopped beating for the day Logan would be found. The ringing of the phone shattered the fragile calm. The caller ID read, Detective Marcus Harlan. Ella's hand trembled as she answered. Mrs. Prescott, I need you to sit down, Marcus said, his voice low but urgent. We found something related to Logan's case. Ella's breath caught. After all this time, after so many dead ends, a flicker of hope ignited in her chest. What did you find? She whispered. There's a trunk found near a creek by a hiker. Inside, a faded circus clown costume and a small jacket. We need you to come and identify them. Ella's knees buckled, but she forced herself upright. I'll be ready, please hurry. Ella's hands trembled as she pulled on a faded blouse and well-worn jeans, her mind a storm of emotions. Could these items truly belong to Logan? 25 years of searching, hoping, and heartbreak now felt like they might be drawing to a turning point. She paused briefly by the mirror, staring into her own tired eyes, then grabbed her coat and purse. The officer assigned to drive her, Officer Daniels, arrived punctually. His calm presence offered some small comfort as they drove toward the creek where the items had been found. The late spring sun filtered through tall oaks lining the narrow road, casting dappled shadows on the wet pavement. The storm from the previous week had unleashed floods that shifted soil, uprooted trees, and revealed secrets long buried. At the scene, a cluster of uniformed officers and forensic technicians worked busily. Yellow caution tape fluttered against the backdrop of dense forest, cordoning off a muddy bank where the trunk had been exposed. Nearby, James Beckett, a grizzled local hiker in his 60s, stood watching with a solemn expression. James greeted Ella with a firm but gentle handshake. I was hiking early this morning after the storm passed through, he said, his voice gravelly but steady. The creek had overflowed, washing away years of built-up dirt and debris. That's when I spotted the old trunk, half buried in the mud. When I pried it open, I found this costume, a tattered clown outfit, and a small jacket. Something about it didn't sit right with me, so I called the police. Detective Marcus Harlan, waiting nearby, motioned for Ella to join him as the technicians carefully laid out the trunk and its contents on a large blue tarp. The trunk itself was heavy, its leather cracked and worn, showing decades of exposure to the elements. The clown costume was faded, the fabric brittle, and stained with dirt and water damage. Ella knelt slowly, her breath hitching as she reached toward a small jacket lying near the costume. The fabric was frayed and faded, but the distinct patches she had sewn onto the sleeves were unmistakable. This is Logan's jacket, she whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. I made it for him when he was 6. Look at the stitching here. He loved those patches. I remember how proud he was to wear it at the fair. Her hands trembled as she gently traced the seams, a wave of memories washing over her. She pictured Logan's bright smile as he ran around the fairgrounds, the sound of the carousel music, the cotton candy sweet scent of the air. Detective Harlan shifted his gaze to the clown costume. The face of the costume, once meant to be joyful and inviting, was now distorted. The fabric had been crudely altered, folds and stitches creating a sad, almost menacing expression. "Someone modified this costume," Marcus noted quietly. "It doesn't match the cheerful clown Logan was photographed with. We'll be bringing in forensic experts and costume specialists to examine these alterations closely." Ella's heart pounded with a mix of fear and hope. The discovery was both a confirmation and a mystery, evidence that Logan's disappearance was no accident, but the specifics remained locked in time. As she stood and wiped her tears away, she felt the weight of the years lift slightly. The past, buried beneath layers of mud and silence, was now surfacing. The truth, long hidden, was finally within reach. Detective Marcus Harlan wasted no time coordinating the next steps. The trunk and its eerie contents were carefully transported to the State Forensic Lab in Des Moines, where experts began their meticulous examination. Ella waited anxiously in the small observation room, clutching the Polaroid camera she'd carried with her for decades. The familiar weight of it in her hands offered a bittersweet comfort, a tangible link to the day Logan vanished. At the lab, forensic specialists documented every inch of the faded costume and jacket. The fabric was fragile, the dirt and moisture having softened its fibers after years underground. They scanned for fingerprints, DNA, and any trace evidence that might tie the items to a suspect. One technician carefully lifted the torn clown mask. Its expression was grotesquely altered. The original happy smile had been stitched into a downturned frown, the eyes reshaped to look hollow and sorrowful. The changes were deliberate, meant to evoke fear or sadness rather than joy. Ella's heart sank. The costume had been used as a tool of psychological torment, an unsettling detail that deepened the mystery of Logan's disappearance. The forensic team's findings confirmed no blood or other physical signs of violence on the fabric itself. However, trace amounts of an unknown substance were detected, a chemical residue that the lab was still analyzing. It suggested the costume might have been used in an environment far more sinister than a simple carnival. Next, the case was handed to costume historian and expert Gerald Thompson, who specialized in vintage fair and circus attire. Gerald's office was lined with racks of meticulously preserved costumes, a testament to his passion for the history of performance. Studying photographs of the trunk's contents and examining fabric samples, Gerald noted several inconsistencies. "This isn't an official carnival costume," he said gravely. "The stitching is hand-sewn, not machine-made like the standard costumes issued by fair operators in the 1980s. And the materials here are cheaper, less durable. This was made or altered by someone outside the official costume department." Gerald's expert eye also picked up on the subtle but chilling alterations to the mask's face creases and folds added to distort the original cheerful character into something more sinister. "It's a knockoff costume," Gerald explained, "likely created to get close to children without drawing suspicion. Someone wanted to appear friendly but with a hidden purpose." This revelation hit Ella hard. The innocence and joy of the state fair had been weaponized against her son. She thought of the moments Logan had smiled for photos beside the carousel, and the clown moments forever tinged now with fear. Detective Harlan promised Ella the investigation was far from over. With the new evidence and expert insights, the cold case was now active again. He assured her that every lead would be pursued, every stone turned. Ella left the lab with a mixture of dread and hope. The past was resurfacing, dark and complicated, but for the first time in decades, she had reason to believe Logan's story wasn't finished. The morning sun filtered softly through the dusty windows of Crane's Costume Creations, a small weathered shop nestled in a forgotten strip mall on the edge of Des Moines. The faded sign above the door creaked gently in the breeze, hinting at years of stories held within. Ella pushed open the door, setting off a bell that echoed in the quiet space. The air smelled of aged fabric, sewing needles, and a faint trace of mustiness. She hesitated for a moment, then stepped inside. Behind a cluttered counter stood an elderly man with kind eyes and a weathered face, Elias Crane, the shop's owner and craftsman. His white hair was thin but neatly combed, and he adjusted his glasses as he studied Ella carefully. "Can I help you?" Elias asked, his voice soft but steady. "I'm Ella Prescott," she said, reaching into her purse for the worn Polaroid photos she had taken at the forensic lab. "I'm looking for information about a clown costume, one that was altered years ago." Elias nodded slowly, his eyes reflecting a flicker of recognition. It's been a while since I've had anyone ask about that, he said, gesturing toward a back room filled with racks of costumes in various states of repair. As he led her inside, another figure appeared from the shadows, a younger man in his early 30s with keen eyes and a nervous energy. I'm Derek Shaw, he introduced himself. I handle the shop's records and inventory, though things have gotten a bit scattered over the years. Ella watched as Derek pulled out an ancient, bulky computer, an early model that seemed out of place in the age of sleek technology. He explained that before the shop's decline, he had painstakingly digitized decades of handwritten receipts and alteration orders. Together, they began searching the database for anything matching the description of the altered clown costume. Derek's fingers flew over the clunky keyboard as he filtered entries from the mid-1980s, searching keywords like alteration, clown, and mask. Elias leaned in, his voice low. I remember the costume well. It was a custom job. Someone came in with a sketch of a sad clown face and asked us to alter the mask accordingly. It was unusual, but we didn't question it at the time. Derek paused, eyes narrowing at the screen. Here it is, May 23rd, 1985. Costume alteration, mask modifications, nose replacement, facial seam work. Customer name, Harold Vance. Ella's breath caught. The name was unfamiliar, but sinister in its implication. Harold Vance, she whispered. Elias nodded grimly. He was a recluse who worked odd jobs at the fairgrounds back then. Quiet, kept to himself. Not many saw him, but those who did said he had an odd fascination with the performers. Derek pulled up contact information linked to the order. A mailing address in the Los Hills, a rural area outside the city. The pieces were falling into place. Ella thanked them both, her resolve hardening. This lead was precious, a tangible thread connecting the past to the present. She knew the road ahead would be difficult, but she would follow every clue, no matter how dark the path. The fluorescent lights of the small-town grocery store flickered faintly as Ella entered, clutching the notes in the sketch of the altered clown costume tightly in her hand. The hum of the checkout scanners and the low murmur of customers provided a strangely comforting backdrop to the storm brewing inside her. She scanned the aisles nervously, glancing at faces but seeing no one familiar, until she caught sight of a tall, thin man near the back of the store. His unkempt hair and sallow skin gave him an almost ghostly presence. Something about him made Ella's breath hitch. That man was Harold Vance. Ella's heart pounded as she cautiously approached the checkout lane, where Harold was gathering canned goods and a few bottles of liquor. His cold eyes flicked toward her for a brief moment, then quickly looked away, his expression unreadable. Gathering her courage, Ella cleared her throat. "Excuse me," she said, voice steady despite the racing of her heart. "Do you know anything about a clown costume that was altered in 1985? It's important to me." Harold's lips twitched into a faint, unsettling smile. "Costumes? I've seen plenty," he replied, voice low and gravelly. "But what's your interest, lady?" Before Ella could respond, the store's cashier gave her a brief, sympathetic glance. "That's Harold Vance," the cashier whispered when Ella looked away for a moment. "He used to work around the fairgrounds years ago. Not many liked him." Ella swallowed hard and pressed on. "Harold, I'm looking for my son. He disappeared at the fair that year. I believe this costume is connected. Can you help me?" Harold's smile faded. He set down his groceries slowly and took a step closer, his eyes cold and hard. "You're digging up old ghosts, Mrs. Prescott. Some things are better left buried." Ella didn't flinch. "I won't stop until I know the truth." Harold's gaze darkened, and without another word, he turned and pushed past the aisles, disappearing toward the exit. Ella stood frozen for a moment, then quickly pulled out her phone. She dialed Detective Marcus Harlan. "Detective, I just saw Harold Vance at the store. He knows more than he's letting on. We need to move fast." Marcus's voice was calm but urgent on the other end. "Stay where you are. We're dispatching units to monitor him. Do not confront him again." Ella nodded to herself, her determination burning brighter than ever. The pieces were coming together, and the moment of truth was drawing near. The sun was beginning its slow descent behind the rolling hills as Detective Marcus Harlan and his team closed in on the remote Loess Hills region. The thick trees and winding dirt roads created a labyrinthine maze, perfect for someone intent on hiding. Harold Vance had been spotted leaving the grocery store, his movements furtive and cautious. Police units tracked his car through the narrow country roads, radios crackling with updates as officers coordinated a perimeter to prevent his escape. Ella sat in the front passenger seat beside Marcus, gripping her purse tightly. The gravel crunch beneath the tires echoed through the silence, punctuated only by Marcus's calm instructions over the radio. "We're almost there," Marcus said. "Hold tight." As they rounded a sharp bend, a dusty dirt driveway appeared, flanked by towering oaks whose gnarled branches cast long shadows across the worn wooden cabin ahead. The structure was weathered, paint peeling, and windows shuttered, looking abandoned from the outside. Marcus stepped out first, surveying the area. "We've got fresh tire tracks leading right here," he reported to the team via radio. Officers spread out cautiously, weapons drawn but lowered, moving stealthily toward the cabin. Ella's heart pounded in her chest, each beat a painful reminder of the years lost. She glanced back at the forest line, its dense foliage swallowing sounds and movement alike. Suddenly, a figure darted from behind the cabin. Harold. His face was pale, eyes wild with desperation as he sprinted toward the tree line. "Suspect fleeing on foot," Marcus shouted, signaling officers to give chase. The team sprang into action, boots pounding the earth as they pursued Harold through the thick underbrush. Ella stayed behind with a backup officer, her breath shallow as she prayed for Logan's safety. Deeper into the woods, the chase grew frantic. Harold's desperate attempts to evade capture were evident in the way he stumbled over roots and low branches, his resolve fading. Meanwhile, officers circled the cabin and discovered a faint smell of gasoline lingering in the air. The wood was dry and brittle, making the old structure a tinderbox waiting to ignite. One of the officers called in over the radio. "Detective Harlan, we've got signs of accelerants inside. There might be someone trapped." Marcus's face hardened. "We need to act fast. Fire department on standby?" "En route," came the reply. Without hesitation, the officers breached the cabin door, smoke already beginning to curl from the cracked windows. Inside, the darkness was thick, lit only by the fading daylight filtering through the grimy panes. Through the haze, they found Logan, weak, disoriented, but alive, chained to a bed frame, his clothes tattered and face smeared with dirt. Nearby lay Derek Shaw, the archivist who had helped trace the costume records, trapped and coughing, but conscious. Marcus motioned for paramedics as the team worked quickly to free the boys. The flames crept dangerously close, licking at the walls, but the officers carried them out to safety just moments before the cabin erupted in smoke and fire. Ella rushed forward, tears streaming down her face as she embraced Logan. Her son returned from the depths of darkness. The years of fear, uncertainty, and pain seemed to collapse into this single moment of reunion. Paramedics loaded them into ambulances, assuring Ella that Logan and Derek would receive the care they needed. The investigation was far from over, but for now hope had won. In the sterile, brightly lit emergency room, Ella sat quietly beside Logan's hospital bed, holding his fragile hand in hers. The hum of machines and distant voices surrounded them, but her focus was entirely on her son, pale, weak, yet alive. Detective Marcus Harlan stood nearby, his expression a mix of relief and determination. "We've arrested Harold Vance," he informed Ella. "He's cooperating, but the full story's coming out slowly." Later in an interrogation room, Harold sat slumped in a chair, his gaunt face shadowed by years of neglect and obsession. His voice was low and hollow as he confessed to watching the Prescott family for months, fascinated by their routines and Logan's innocent charm. "I never meant to hurt him," Harold muttered. "I just wanted to keep him, to be a part of their world. The costume, it was my way in." He described how he obtained and altered the clown costume to resemble the carnival's characters, but with subtle changes that reflected his twisted mindset. The sad, distorted mask was meant to instill fear, a control tactic to keep Logan compliant. Harold admitted to luring Logan away during the fair, hiding him in the cabin deep in the Low S Hills, and subjecting him to years of psychological manipulation. Though he denied physical abuse, the emotional scars ran deep. Dr. Samantha Cole, a forensic psychologist, explained the lasting trauma Logan had endured. "Captivity, especially at such a young age, leads to complex PTSD," she said gently. "Logan's attachment to Harold is a form of Stockholm Syndrome, a survival mechanism to cope with prolonged abuse." Ella listened, heartbreaking yet strengthened by the knowledge that healing had begun. Logan was safe now, but the road ahead would be long. Detective Harlan assured her, "We're continuing to investigate any others who may have been involved. This isn't an isolated case." As night fell, Ella sat beside Logan, brushing his tangled hair from his forehead. His eyes fluttered open, and with a faint smile, he whispered, "Mom." Ella's tears flowed freely. "I'm here, baby. I never stopped fighting for you." In that hospital room, after a quarter-century of darkness, light finally broke through. Days passed slowly in the quiet hospital room as Logan's strength gradually returned. Ella stayed by his side, her presence a steady anchor amid the storm of medical tests and therapy sessions. Logan's eyes, once dull and distant, began to sparkle again with small moments of recognition and trust. The journey from victim to survivor was just beginning, but Ella was determined to walk every step with him. Therapists worked gently to unravel the layers of trauma, the confusion, fear, and misplaced loyalty to Harold. Each breakthrough was met with tears and tentative smiles. Ella often sat holding Logan's hand, whispering stories of his childhood, reminding him of the life waiting beyond the cabin's shadows. Outside the hospital, community members rallied in support, their quiet kindness a balm to wounds unseen. Fundraisers, counseling groups, and outreach programs sprang up, a testament to the town's resilience and compassion. Ella found herself embracing hope anew, a fragile but fierce flame rekindled by her son's courage. Though scars remained visible and invisible, they no longer defined their story. Together, mother and son began to rebuild, honoring the past but stepping boldly toward a future filled with possibility. As the weeks turned to months, Ella Prescott found herself reflecting on the long and painful journey she and Logan had endured. What had begun as a desperate search had evolved into a profound testament to resilience and community strength. The small town of Des Moines had come together in ways Ella never imagined. Local organizations launched awareness campaigns about child safety, and neighbors formed support networks for families affected by trauma. The story of Logan's rescue ignited hope for countless others still searching for answers. Ella began speaking publicly, sharing her experience to give voice to those silenced by fear and uncertainty. Her courage inspired others to keep faith in the face of darkness. Though the scars of the past would never fully fade, Ella believed in the power of healing and the promise of new beginnings. In quiet moments, she would sit beside Logan, watching him laugh and dream, the boy who had vanished but never truly been lost. Together, they carried forward a message of hope that even in the darkest times, the light of love and determination could guide the way home. Years later, Ella Prescott and Logan stood side by side at the annual Iowa State Fair, the place where their lives had once been torn apart and then slowly pieced back together. The sun shone warmly, laughter and music filling the air with a sense of renewal. Logan, now a young man, smiled freely, a testament to the strength that had carried him through unimaginable darkness. Ella's eyes glistened with tears of gratitude and relief. Their story, once shadowed by loss and despair, had become one of hope and healing. The costume, the cabin, the tireless search, each piece a chapter in a journey toward justice and peace. Ella looked at her son, knowing the road ahead would still have its challenges, but feeling certain that together they could face whatever came. As the carousel spun gently in the background, Ella whispered, "We're home now." And for the first time in decades, home felt like a place of safety, love, and endless possibility.